Okay, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. For those of you in People's Internet Radio, it's 9 p.m., but here it's only 1 p.m. where I am here in California. I'm Emily Windsor Craig, and it's 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on December 19th, 2020. Tomorrow's the first day of winter. Isn't that amazing already? History Reset is brought to you each Saturday to bring valuable information to the public that corporate media refuse to divulge. This program is a public service, but please donate to People's Internet Radio and keep the people's truth coming at you. All right? So today we're going to get into profiteering on disease and how treachery, piracy, and perfidy affect the experience of aging. And I think I can qualify as aged. I'm going to be 77. All right. And in my experience, I took care of my 91-year-old grandmother, and I took care of my 83-year-old adopted mother until they both passed on. And so I'm familiar with the process of medical care for the aged. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And the first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about the Hippocratic Oath and then the 1973 legislation that enabled medical care to become a profit center rather than a monopolistic utility. All right. And then we're going to look at where these flu viruses are coming from and who profits from them. And then we're going to talk about how to minimize our dependence on this profiteering medical care disease management system that we are confronted with. Okay, so I'm going to share with you my secrets, how I avoid going to the doctor. Well, avoid it like the plague, literally, okay? So first of all, let's look at the Hippocratic Oath, which is what every physician has to sign on to. And I'm going to read a translation. It was originally propagated in Greek. So here's a translation of the Hippocratic Oath. I swear by Apollo healer, by Asclepius, by Hygelia, by Panacea, and by all the gods and goddesses, making them my witnesses, that I will carry out according to my ability and judgment this oath and this indenture. To hold my teacher in this art equal to my own parents, to make him partner in my livelihood when he is in need of money, to share mine with him, to consider his family as my own brothers, and to teach them this art if they want to learn it without fee or indenture, to impart precept, oral instruction, and all other instruction to my own sons, the sons of my teacher, and to indentured pupils who have taken the healer's oath, but to nobody else. Okay. And so what does this say about the amounts of financing that go into making a doctor an MD? To continue, I will use those dietary regimens which will benefit my patients according to my greatest ability and judgment, and I will do no harm or injustice to them. Neither will I administer a poison to anyone when asked to do so, nor will I suggest such a course. Similarly, I will not give to a woman a pessary to cause abortion, but I will keep pure and holy both my life and my art. I will not use the knife, not even verily on sufferers from stone, but I will give place to such as are craftsmen therein. Into whatsoever houses I enter, I will enter to help the sick and will abstain from all intentional wrongdoing and harm, especially from abusing the bodies of man or woman, bond or free. And whatsoever I shall see or hear in the course of my profession, as well as outside my profession in my intercourse with men, if it be what should not be published abroad, I will never divulge, holding such things to be holy secrets. Now, if I carry out this oath and break it not, may I gain forever reputation among all men for my life and for my art. But if I break it and forswear myself, may the opposite befall me. Wow. Not many of us have ever heard that before. All right. And so doctors are not supposed to do harm. I failed to put up the graphic that shows in American mortality rates that 250,000 people, individuals, souls, die each year from iatrogenic medical errors. And that's why I'm bringing all this up, because in the medical profession, it's a very intimate relationship between the patient and the doctor. And so the opportunities for mischief or deceit.
Say, Emily?
Yeah.
That's just in America alone, right?
Yeah, that's just in America alone. Right. 250,000, 40,000 die from suicide, 40,000 die from gunshot wounds, but 250,000 people every year die from medical stupidity. I want that to stick, right? So the next thing I'm going to deal with is who's supposed to profit from the practice of medicine. And I found this article. Was it illegal to profit from healthcare prior to the HMO Act of 1973? Before 1973, it was illegal in the U.S. to profit off healthcare. The Health Maintenance Organization Act of 1973, passed by Nixon, changed everything. In 1973, Nixon did a personal favor for his friend and campaign financier, Edgar Kaiser, then president and chairman of Kaiser Permanente. I used to work for Kaiser. Nixon signed into law the Health Maintenance Organization Act of 1973, in which medical insurance agencies, hospitals, clinics, and even doctors could begin functioning as for-profit business entities instead of the service organizations they were intended to be, and which insurance company got the first taste of federal subsidies to implement HMO A73. And it was, of course, Kaiser Permanente. And my mother took me to Kaiser Permanente when I was 5 years old with pneumonia. So I was in the Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. How about that? Okay, now let's move on to the 1980s and to a graphic that I have posted at Facebook and at People's Internet Radio, which is a graphic that depicts all of the viruses that have been loosed upon mankind from Fort Detrick, Maryland. Beginning, let's see, the Spanish flu's 1918, 40 to 60 million died. The Russian flu, 1889 to 1890, killed 1 million. All right, let's look at some of these others. The Asian flu, 1957-58, killed 1.1 million. The Hong Kong flu, 1968 to 1970, killed 1 million. All right, since then, SARS, 2002 to 2003, killed 770. Swine flu, 2009 to 2010, took out 200,000. MERS, 2012 till now, took out 850. Ebola, 2014 to 2016, took out 11.3 thousand, okay, 11,300. Okay, and the COVID-19, as of now, has taken out just a little short of 10,000. Now, none of the previous vaccines required a shutdown like we have seen. Where did these vaccines come from? Well, it's well known they came from Fort Detrick, Maryland. And I remember in the 80s, beginning in 81, there was the HIV, the AIDS virus that came out of there, okay? So somebody, since 1973, when medical science became a profit center, somebody has been busy creating diseases and then creating vaccines that they want to shoot up everybody, and the vaccine becomes the product of the science that is a consumer product that we should all pay for. Well, we have to think about whether we want to do that. Now, the last time I had the flu, I'll tell you, I was so sick, I thought I was going to die. It was, I've remembered now, it was 1989, the beginning of 1990. And I remember that flu because I was going back and forth to George Mason University after I just got my baccalaureate and I was working on a master's degree. And I was teaching. I was an instructor in the communication department, and I had to teach classes. And I was so sick with that flu, I remember going to school, a cop pulled me over and wanted to charge me with reckless driving, like I was that sick. And when he pulled me over, I thanked him and I said, you know, officer, I probably shouldn't even be driving. I am so sick. And that was the last time I had the flu back in 1989. As a result of that flu, it kind of scared me. And so I never did have a flu shot since 1990, which is 30 years ago. And I have never, since 1990, had the flu. Never had it, all right, since 1990. I've been all kinds of public places since 1990. I've driven across the country twice. I worked in a half a dozen different workplaces, and I haven't got the flu since 1990. Now, what's going on here? And if you notice, the schedule for vaccines has been sped up and sped up and sped up and sped up for children until now. Almost 10% of kids have vaccine reactions, many becoming autistic, right? So vaccines have become a problem because they are also a profit center, particularly for the quote elderly like me, all right? If you're elderly, then they make some presumptions about your health, about your nutrition, about your vaccine status, about your mental status, and about what you're probably consuming. Now, I was having a lot of problems with high blood pressure because of the pheochromocytoma bilateral that I acquired about 20 years ago. And over time, what I noticed was that the prescriptions that I got made the problem change and go into different areas. So gradually, I have halted all prescriptions. And that's why today I would talk about what we can do to keep from participating in and being victimized by a profiteering disease management system that has taken over medical science and that is creating a mortality rate that's fairly horrendous. 250,000 people a year dying from medical errors. Wow, that's awful, all right? I have a quote today from, actually it's a little clip from Jim Core on Twitter, and he reports that a gentleman by the name of Porton Down, who's British, has exposed humans used as guinea pigs to a nerve agent as an experiment. Can you run that clip for me, Steve?
Yes, I can. We'll just have to about 10 seconds of silence.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. I'll wait for it, because it is testimony that human beings are utilized as guinea pigs in studying these manufactured viruses that come from Fort Detrick, Maryland. And this is not a good idea. You know, there have been all kinds of experiments on Americans. There was Ultra and Monarch, and the syphilis experiment used against black men back in the 40s. Are we ready?
I'm going to take the microphone off and play it, yes.
Okay.
Vaccination, testing and treatment. The virus is presently being grown and tested at the Portadown facility in England for all of the UK countries.
It's back. Okay. Sorry, your Facebook people weren't going to be able to hear that.
Oh, okay. It didn't work on Facebook. Okay. All right. All right. So there's testimony to the reality that human beings are utilized by the corporate healthcare industry as guinea pigs to try out their vaccines and drugs and remedies. So there are 3 violations of trust that I'm going to focus on today. There's treachery, which is saying one thing and doing something else. There's piracy, and that's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And there's perfidy, and that's playing both ends against the middle. Okay. These 3 behavioral faults are not covered in holy law at all. And when Jesus Christ came and taught, he said, let your no mean no, but he didn't say, don't lie about what you're doing to people, okay? He chased the money changers out of the temple, but he didn't specifically teach against creating protection rackets by taxing one group of people to support a different group of people, which is what socialism is all about. And third, he only criticized teachers and priests as a body of people teaching error. He didn't set one teacher against another teacher, which is what has become characteristic of the church, wherein my doctrine is righter than your doctrine, and our doctrine is righter than their doctrine, and all of the sects and denominations are set against each other. And so in today's media, individuals are set against each other over their beliefs or their policy or their, what's the word I want? Their ontological explanation for something. Ideas are set against each other, and individuals are set against each other. We have identity politics, which is an abuse and what I would call perfidy, which is not telling the truth about other people, but only criticizing the way they think. So we have treachery, we have piracy, and we have perfidy that are not covered in holy law and that weren't covered thoroughly in the Sermon on the Mount. So it becomes necessary at this time in history, in this place in Western Civ, to look around and see how are people affected by treachery, piracy, and perfidy. Treachery, of course, is saying one thing and doing something else. Advertising is the exercise of treachery because quite often the advertisement for a product does not state what the absolute outcome is going to be. It's going to make you happy. It's going to make you this and that. Okay. Advertising is an exercise in treachery because it's not real and not true. A lot of claims made about investments and making money are treacherous because they never pan out. A lot of claims made about health and well-being, especially to older people, do not pan out. I don't know how many advertisements I've seen for CBD oil, of marijuana, for food supplements, for appliances and health concoctions and supplements, okay? And sometimes they help a little, but usually not as much as they cost, all right? Education is full of treachery because it doesn't teach at university. Only chemistry and biochemistry and mechanics teach the laws of causes and effects, but the social sciences and the arts teach perceptions and ontologies and matrices, and they don't teach laws of cause and effect. So academia has been left teaching theories of socialistic domination that merely discard and destroy the civil due process of law in whatever country that the people decide they're sick and tired of avarice and greed and top-down coercion and control. Okay, so the protection racket used to just be characteristic of the mafia. I remember a time back in the 50s and 60s when even lotteries were called numbers games, and they were illegal. Nowadays, there are all kinds of penalties we have to pay to be safe. Pay me or I'll hurt you, okay? Okay, you pay the insurance company, you have to pay for licensure, you have to pay for fees. There's all kinds of fees and penalties and licensure. Well, those are protection rackets for government and jurisdictions, all right? And they're really, really not necessary for the exercise of civil consensus problem solving. Finally, the use of divide and conquer and identity politics in the media has all but destroyed the ability of our election system to carry on a fair and lawful election. As you know, or you're going to be finding out, something like 10 million counterfeit ballots were printed and then provided to jurisdictions in the United States by China. The Dominion voting system is designed to flip votes from one candidate to the next. And the Democratic Party, with its funders, the people funding things, okay, actually paid the poll workers to violate state laws in the practice of voting. So we had an election that was thrown. It was rigged at 3 levels. And the top level, which is the counterfeit ballots, was an international intrusion that is subject to the Department of Defense, never mind the Department of Justice. We know the Department of Justice and the FBI have been weaponized by internal staff. Even the Supreme Court of the United States refuses to act on this rigged election. So it's going to take actions on the part of the Defense Department and the military to bring this election bring it to justice, which is going to be really, really tough. So there we have treachery, protection rackets that have thrown the election, and perfidy by the mainstream media to keep us all confused about what the outcome actually was. Okay, so I'm going to leave all of that political stuff aside now. It only took me 30 minutes to get through that. And now I'm going to talk about the parts of health that I have been able to affect so I don't have to go. I don't have to subject myself to visits, procedures, tests, and most of all, prescriptions, because the prescriptions are very, very important. Now, I was born with a couple of disabilities, okay? I have a blood disorder called porphyria, which is the same thing that King George III had, and they thought it was just insanity because what it amounts to is panic attacks. That's what porphyria creates in you. And what else porphyria created in me was it engaged and involved my adrenal glands so that I developed polyps on the adrenals for when I stopped breathing. All right, when you have porphyria, you hold your breath, which is not a good thing, not a good idea, not a good idea at all. All right, so there are some things that I have learned how to do to wean myself away from the allopathic model, okay? I used to go to a chiropractor when I was having a problem breathing or a problem with digestion because there were two vertebrae in my spine that used to get out of alignment. And one of them pinched the breathing apparatus and the other pinched the digestion apparatus. And so the chiropractor would just put them back in order and then I'd be okay again for a while. And that worked until I got to my 60s and some of my vertebrae fused because there was no longer the collagen pads in between the vertebrae. That's what happens to you when you kind of settle and you start shrinking. Yes, I've shrunk about 2.5 inches over the last 60 years. And I've helped that shrinkage along by the practice of detoxifying. You know, toxins are everywhere. We have fluoride in the water that calcifies the pineal gland, which is our key to telepathic, clairaudient, clairvoyant behaviors, okay? And so I've been looking, how long? Let's see, when did I start detoxing? I think it was back about 1976, 77, when I was subject to an enormous amount of stress and my digestion wasn't working very well, my breathing wasn't working very well. So I went to a Crow Indian in Manassas, Virginia, by the name of Bud Mutterman. And he sold me bags of herbs that I dumped in the bathtub for about 6 weeks. Now, I had been a smoker for 20 years at that point. And when I started taking those herb baths, and they consisted of cayenne pepper, a salt, and powdered bloodroot is what I knew what was in them. I took those baths for 6 weeks and never craved another cigarette. Those detox baths cured me of smoking without any subjective effort on my part. I have never craved another cigarette. It was just gone, okay? that was the beginning of my realization that we can get rid of the poisons in our body and feel better about it. Whereas the medical doctors don't ever talk about the possibility of doing that. It doesn't come up. They prefer to give you a prescription for one medication that alleviates one symptom in your body, but may cause something else again. All right. So it was in the late 70s that I began the process of detoxifying. And in the early 80s, because I had already been going to a chiropractor, I took a course from a reflexologist by the name of Ina Bryant, and I still have her books. And I learned how to give myself a foot massage or how to deal with referred pain anywhere on my body. Okay, where is the nerve ending for digestion? Right here in the crook of my hand. Okay, so I learned how to deal with pains without any medications whatsoever. All right. When it comes to pain, I realized that aspirin is white oak bark. Okay, aspirin per se is fairly harmless if you don't thin the blood too much and have a bleeding problem, or it can also cause bleeding in the stomach. But if you're judicious with it, aspirin will enlarge your capillaries so you get better circulation and the headache goes away, or whatever the discomfort is kind of goes away. That's when I learned about pain, was when I took that reflexology course. And I've continued to use that skill my whole life. And so pain has never been much of a problem. Now, in the matter of diet, I realized in my early 20s that sugar makes me sick. Anything that's terribly sweet or terribly salty just doesn't go down right. So I got rid of sugar when I was in my 20s. In my late 30s, early 40s, because I was going through the detox and I was going through alleviating pain with reflexology and chiropractic. I also went through a period of learning about how food affects me personally. It's not just a matter of listening to somebody tell you, you need to eat this much of this and that much of that and something else. It doesn't work like that at all. I found a metabolic type test that was published by a doctor that treated cancer in Chicago. And I have used and kept that metabolic type test that I publish in my nutrition book. Okay. And what it points out is that metabolism is a genetic inheritance. Eskimos eat whale blubber and fish. And that's what they eat. That's it. A few blueberries. Okay, but whale blubber and fish, and they live on it. The problem they have with living on whale blubber and fish is that their diet is highly acid and they have a lot of problems with arthritis. They have a terrible time with arthritis. That's when I learned about the acid-base balance of the foods that we eat. And while I was at university studying nutrition, I got deeply involved in USDA's food nutrition tables, which used to be fabulous. They used to really tell you what you needed to know until in the late 80s and early 90s, USDA changed the format of the food labeling to make it unusable and impossible. And they flooded their nutrient tables with junk foods, okay? They don't want us knowing what's in our food. And that became very obvious and very clear to me in the early 90s when I saw what USDA did to their food tables, and I realized that they had no intention to minimize the herbicides and poisons in the foods we eat, because the only thing that mattered to USDA and to agribiz was the efficient harvesting of whatever crop they happened to be growing. Okay, efficient harvesting became the end all and the be all of agriculture. All right, well, we know where that led. That led to the use of Roundup, glyphosate, in just about all of our grains and staples. And that has resulted, the use of glyphosate in all grains and staples, is that healthy people now avoid grains and staples with glyphosate in it, which means you pretty much are on a paleo diet. The paleo diet has become very popular because people realize there's something wrong with the grains that we're eating. There's something wrong with these tomatoes. They make sores. I get sores in my mouth if I try to eat these beautiful tomatoes. And I got some potatoes that were GMO. And when I cooked them up, they turned kind of a translucent gray, and they smelled funny. I mean, that's the kind of products you get from GMO when they haven't been tested, but who knows what they do to your digestion system. So as a result of that, I learned to eat organic and only organic. And so my whole digestive system began to straighten out more when I was able, through detoxing, to minimize the number of infections, secondary infections that I picked up here and there. You know, we all pick up infections. I saw an article a couple days ago that Morgellons, you know what Morgellons is? You know, most people in the United States have Morgellons in their systems now. And the symptom that you know you have Morgellons is you have lesions on your skin and they have little black threads in them, okay? I got Morgellons in 2007 off an infected dart. I was shot by an infected dart by a guy I jilted, and he was angry. All right, and so I took the infection that I got off that dart to the emergency room. And the emergency room doctor announced to me that I was suffering from delusional parasititis. I didn't laugh in his face. I wanted to. All right. So I went home without any advice or help from the medical profession on that score. But I meditated about it. I asked God, how do I get rid of this Morgellons? And so he told me, when you have a lesion like that with a black thread in it, okay, first of all, tincture of iodine directly on the black thread, okay, and then you take a cotton ball and add some alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and you put that over the lesion, and then you Band-Aid over it, and the lesion is going to go away. It took me a year to get rid of the Morgellons lesions that way, one lesion at a time. But I wasn't going to let it defeat me, because having lesions all over your hands or arms or body with threads in them has got to be the most suffocatingly awful thing to happen to anybody. It was terrible. All right. We also pick up viruses and diseases from things we touch and from our childhood diseases. You know, chicken pox has a virus in it that can be picked up by touch also. And I found in that case, garlic is how you get rid of these secondary infections off things that you touch. And I go through a lot of garlic, and maybe people don't want to get close to me because I use so much garlic, but that's okay. I'd rather, just between you and me, not have to take antibiotics, because the antibiotics that are available to older people who are on Medicare and Medi-Cal are the cheapest, most, well, they're gross. They're terrible, the antibiotics that are available to us who are subject to Medicare and Medi-Cal. They're junk. They're absolute junk. The really good antibiotic that I used to get in Arlington, Virginia, is no longer made. It doesn't even come up when I search on it. And so there's no point in talking about it. But antibiotics are a for-profit product that have so many variations. It's difficult, and generics. There's so many variations and so many generics. I ended up, while I was still using antibiotics, by ordering them from Thailand or Canada or Mexico, because there I could get a round of antibiotics, Cipro, which has its own side effects, for about $70, whereas in this country they are $1 a pill. Yeah, $1 a pill is really pricey when you're living on Social Security. Okay, so gradually over time, I've been able to wean myself away from antibiotics, analgesics, and strong drugs. I had a problem with high blood pressure. And of course, high blood pressure is an outcome, it's an effect. It causes other things, but it's primarily an effect. But the medical profession practice is to teach it as if it were a cause, not an effect. And so they give you all kinds of prescriptions for drugs that affect the adrenals and affect the heart rate and affect the heartbeat and affect circulation and affect all other places in the body, hoping that they hit on the right one that decreases your blood pressure when you want your blood pressure to be decreased. You know, there's a time not to decrease your blood pressure. And one of those times is when you're going to sleep. That's not a good time to decrease your blood pressure. And when your blood pressure is high, that's not a good time to sleep either, because that's when you can have a stroke or some kind of cardio accident. This is all about learning how to respond to your own body. In the case of breathing problems, sleep apnea, which I was diagnosed with in the mid-70s, in the mid-90s, learning how to breathe yogically. You see, I still have problems with breathing. Learning how to breathe a yogic breath, which is more exhale than inhale, is how to correct your blood pressure internally. Got to breathe out more and breathe in less. Okay, these are the methods we can learn to minimize the need for running to the doctor and running to the ER. We learn to control what we put in our mouth, to not get the poisons and pollutants in food. We learn how to breathe, to maintain and control our blood pressure. We learn how how it structurally affects everything else. And stretching and exercising are essential for keeping the structure intact. And so that's my answer to the problem of treachery, protection, racketeering, which is piracy, and perfidy, is to become as self-sufficient in our health practices by actually learning the techniques for reflexology, kinesiology, nutrition, yogic breathing, and how to stay away from contrived profits, profit-making products that the medical profession now advances, which do cause harm, do damage the immune system, damage the ability of the body to produce the hormones and responses that it needs to produce naturally. So that's my story for you, my friends, today on Facebook. That's what we're going to have to do if we're going to resist and overcome and endure what is happening to us today. It's not just personal, it's organizational, and it's national. Politicians are masters of treachery. Industries are masters of protection rackets. The media and academia are masters of the sort of perfidy that creates theories and taxonomies and ontologies and stuff that don't teach the laws of cause and effect to get to problem solving. We want to get to problem solving. We have the technology to get to group problem solving. It's called interactive management. It was devised in the 70s and 80s by Dr. John N. Warfield, and I was honored and privileged to be able to teach that method at George Mason University. We have the method to get 40 people in a room who all share a problem situation and unpack and get the testimony of all those people in the room and organize their information and put it up graphically so everybody understands where the problem's coming from and know exactly where to go to fix the problem. We already have the technology to do that. But if you look at what the mainstream media is doing, that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they intend to do. All right. That's not what the medical profession, with its 250,000 deaths each year from iatrogenic errors, intends to do. That's not what academia, that gets paid in grants to teach the Frankfurt School and Saul Alinsky and the protocols to teach our young people to despise and hate and tear down the civil and civic processes that brought our nation to greatness at one time. That's not what academia has on their minds either. They're looking for money for grants, money, 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 as if money was going to help, and money isn't the answer. No, money isn't the answer. Sharing and caring are the answers that expose double dealing, treachery, expose protection rackets, expose the practice of slander and libel to make governance very unwieldy and difficult because you don't know whom to believe. I hope that this has some meaning to you. Yes, I'm an old lady, and I'm giving you my experience, and I hope my experience is of some value to you young people, because we're being deceived 60 ways to Sunday, and We have to bring it to an end by refusing to be deceived and looking for the actual causes and effects of our problems and solving our problems and staying away from the fist fights and the tactics of divide and conquer that we are exposed to every day. And I just want to say to you, if you live out of this cell phone, you're a victim of the whole system. Okay? And I'll pray for you. I'll pray for everybody because this is such a critical and difficult time. And so there we go. What do you know? I got there, Steve. I did the whole thing without any notes today. No notes to follow. But, you know, a lifetime is not that hard to follow. So this has been Emily Windsor Craig, and it has been on People's Internet Radio today. And we are going to defeat the treachery, piracy, and perfidy that our civilization has been unwilling to address or solve as an ethical civil problem. So let's see where we can go with it now. Hope things will get better. But you never know. You never know. We just do what we can. Thank you so much for coming by, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. And maybe you can tell me your experiences with perfidy, piracy, and treachery. We'll see you guys later. Okay, friends, I hope that today's history reset is making sense to you and you can see how we really have a predicament here with a medical disease management system that is for profit, and every visit, test, procedure, and prescription has its inflating cost. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and maybe now you can see why. I hope that you have found this video interesting and informative, and please give me your feedback and add your experiences and let me know how it went for you. Thank you so much. This is Emily Craig. Bye-bye.